how do you think these days Japanese are viewing the nuclear power and the safety particularly related to it?
So first of all, thank you for having me.
Great pleasure to have you.
So before the thank you. So before the Fukushima accident, Japanese government promoted nuclear energy as safe, cheap, and then to be able to reduce CO2 emission. But as you know, accident happened. So since then, so Japanese public now rethink carefully on nuclear safety and those words, cheap, safe, and CO2 emission words. So much of the Japanese public does not have trust and confidence in the government and the nuclear industries.
I see.
Nearly 6 years have passed since the Fukushima nuclear accident. In the late January this year, TEPCO investigated number 2 nuclear reactor of Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power site, which revealed very, very high radiation level. And this is the first ever cross-examination inside the reactor pressure vessel. So there are no change outside of number 2 reactor radiation level, but the recent reaction to the high radiation level found during the research of the number 2 reactor revealed that there is still fear and suspicion on nuclear power.
Mr. Kikuchi, Mr. Kikuchi, if I could jump in about another important question, that is the change of policy. When Prime Minister Noda, the one who experienced the Fukushima nuclear accident, talked about it would phase out Japan by the year 2040, any nuclear power. But now the Prime Minister Abe talking about Japan cannot live without nuclear power. What does that mean, a kind of choice? Is it a choice within the hands of the government, or do you think the public also have a say? Very briefly from you.
Oh, this is a simple answer because Japan does not have any resources for energy. So that's why 90% of Japan imported energy resources. So since nuclear power plant shut down, Japan has to rely on those energy import. And as you probably know that as Prime Minister Abe took his office, he announced the economic policy, so-called Abenomics. So his priority is economics. But accident happened, and then at that time, Japan relied on nuclear energy resources, import resources, but also weak currency. So Japan recorded huge deficit trade.
I see. So
that's
with
why Japan would like to promote.
So you're saying economic realities
plant
in Japan is giving the Prime Minister seem to a free ticket to so-called nuclear power. Before we go, once again, very briefly from you, Mr. Kikuchi, the fact that now with the North Korean, in a way, and also the United States on different fronts of the argument about the nuclear development on the Korean Peninsula, what will be the choice for Japan? Even more nuclear development, and even thinking about nuclear weapons, which is some of the think tanks have been proposing. What do you think about that possibility, Mr. Kikuchi? Briefly.
Oh, I'm not a technical person, policy expert, so I cannot say possibility, but Japan signed the NPT in 1970 as a non-nuclear weapon state, has also provided additional assurance by adhering so-called 3 non-nuclear principles of not producing, not possessing, not permitting introduction of nuclear weapons since 1970s. Despite having those only country to experience a nuclear bomb, Japan's nuclear intentions are still sometimes questioned. As you know, Japanese plan to consume plutonium is not clear yet. So both international and domestic communities, Japan needs credible plan in current Japanese nuclear energy.